Startup Grind. This is our second event for the 2020. My name is Danilo Bonta, and I am the co-director of Andy for the Perth chapter. So thank you for coming. I want really a pleasure to host all these people and these beautiful guests today. So pretty much what we are doing with Startup Grind, we are a global organization with more than 2 million of entrepreneurs, 600 chapters around the world, and in under 25 countries. So what I want to explain in this short introduction is that we are not doing just events like this. We are something more. So Startup Grind is a huge organization worldwide. So and we are more than happy to help really people to be very well connected also overseas in the startup ecosystem. We are happy also to grab your idea and to talk about your idea. If you have some idea, if you want to run something, if you want to be connected overseas, here we are. So last week I was in San Francisco for our global conference, and the funny thing was that I just met one Australian startup there. So and maybe we was talking about more than 300 startups sharing in the pavilion in Silicon. So our goal, common goal, is for this year to bring more startups.
Get one to Silicon Valley next year. Just one from Perth.
At least 5. So, but at the end of the day, we need you. We need your support. So we need to be connected with you. And so please just reach us for any kind of idea, and we are more than happy to discuss it. So I won't grab more time to the show.
Cool.
So thank you. And Handy Lam.
Thanks, Danny.
Julian.
All right.
You.
Can you press the?
Sure.
Have we got some? Do we have to do this properly? And we've got some slides. Yep. There we go. All right. So first of all, we've got a new sponsor, Other Side Brewery from Fremantle. Okay. Good beer. So we've gone south of the river for this event. Also, we have the fantastic Jurgen, VP, doing the videos again, Perth video. We couldn't do this without you. We've got your slide. Where's his slide gone? All right, we'll put your slide up afterwards. One of the things we wanted to say is that as we go through all of this, so around the world, every chapter that runs, the videos are taken and they're put on YouTube. So you can actually search the YouTube channel to get all these founder stories as well. So video is really, really important. One of the great things about having Jurgen in from here is anyone that's a Perth Startup Grind member, so it's been to an event, 30% off? 30% off. All right, so think about that as you're trying to do something. You can see what I've done in the past with a GoPro, and it's nowhere near as good as what Jurgen does when he puts all this together. So we thank him. Might be something that some other people in the room want to do. Right, so, look at, oh well, hello. Yeah.
He's from, I was in the sun.
I was going to, so, Julian Ilich from Tiller Rides. Again, I always want to try and get stories from people that we haven't really heard of in the ecosystem. So again, you know, there's this whole north-south divide in Perth. So, you know, have you got your passport to come up to this side of the river?
I applied last.
It's all good. It's been stamped, right? So we're just going to explore the Tiller Ride story. I think it's fantastic given what they've done from an equity crowdfunding perspective, but also when you sit there and think about e-bikes in Perth, manufacturing, you know, which is so outside of the mining, oil and gas, engineering stuff. I think it's a fantastic story. So let's start to unpack it. All right. So, Julian. So I'm just making sure we're all good on there.
Do you want me to talk to you or talk?
Mate, you can talk to whoever you want, whatever's easiest. So, look, before Tiller, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Depends how far back you go, but I mean, the essential thing is I am from Perth, so we're still here. I grew up here, went to school, university here, and then I guess one thing that's I think is different about what I've done is I've always wanted to do something with my skills that made a difference. When I look back and go, oh, what did I do differently? I remember I actually got a job in a mining company for the first 6 months. And it was a funny thing because my parents, when I was 18 or 19, you ask your parents to do things, get to 21 and they give you the key, and supposedly. And anyway, I lasted 6 months and I just found it something I just couldn't put my heart into. So I left that after 6 months and really moved straight into renewable energy engineering because I'd studied engineering first. And then the last 20 years or so of my life has really been partly engineering, partly things to do with people. And always I didn't really realise I was an entrepreneur, to be honest. Like today, if you're entrepreneurial, interested in that, you go to school, there'll be something to do with entrepreneurs at school. I didn't really realise that, but about when I was 30, I started this first business called Days of Change. I was running a program for the state government, and then they canned all the funding. It was a climate change thing, and I was like, oh, we've done all this work, I can't just let it die. So there was sort of like this choice to just go and do something with it. So I left the state government, got permission, which I was very surprised, to go and run it privately. That went very well. It was like the biggest thing. And I think that just threw me into the world of entrepreneurialism. It taught me a lot about being on a board, even how to dress. I mean, that sounds really strange, but engineers often dress in short sleeve shirts, and that doesn't quite cut it when you go and meet with...
Just look around the room.
I know. We dress like this at work, but you just learn some things that I didn't know. Running a board, setting up a company, all that sort of stuff. And then that actually didn't end up working out for a bunch of reasons. And then we closed that down and I was doing consulting for a while. And then I guess that's when sort of Tiller Rides came along as an idea, which we'll probably talk about. So that's my rough history. Yeah.
Rough history. So when you discovered this kind of entrepreneurial flair, was it always something you wanted to work on, to get better at, or did you feel that it wasn't quite right what you were doing at the moment, that you were destined for something else that needed to come along? Or
I think so. I've always had ideas, and I've always been someone going, I can see, even I might even look at that thing there and go, I reckon we can improve that. And then I guess the difference was to go, I can improve that as a designer, to I can build a business that makes those things. And that was the shift I think that Days of Change gave me, is that actually to do certain things, you can't just, if you do it within a company, it can be quite constraining. So every company I was in, I was innovating on their products, but very few would actually back you to actually take a risk and do like a new product.
Yeah, to try and unlock the value of it rather than just come up with the idea.
And it was crazy. Like I've so many of these business stories, and I was like, I can't believe you didn't do that. But then I thought you almost have to do it yourself if you really want to innovate and do something new. So I think it was that. And then interestingly on reflection, because when I think about these kind of conversations, my grandfather and dad have almost never worked for anyone else. So it's, I don't know, I think it's actually a dysfunction as much as a talent, like I don't think it's everyone's kind of thing, I mean, we were talking, Rob over there's on our team, he was saying the other day, the amount of time and energy and all the stuff you put into this, it's not something I'd be keen to do. So there's something about it you've got to have. And I don't necessarily think it's all positive. It's like it's like...
No. So you did the kind of consulting thing and the programs and those type of things.
Yeah.
So then where did the idea for a bike come from?
Well, I guess it's funny this, because my dad was in Formula One, right? And I spent my early 20s as a rev head. I had a rally car and I had all this kind of stuff up to about 25. And I kind of didn't ride at all. Whereas I'd ridden to school, and then I think a lot of people, they just throw the bike to the side and it's a thing you use on the weekend. And then at 25, I think I'd always had like a bit of an environmental bent to what I wanted to do. And it was a bit of a thing because my family wasn't really into that, and I was sort of probably a bit drawn in two directions. But at some point I thought, well, riding a bike is fantastic for health, for well-being, environments, all those, saving money, all those types of things, being outside. And so I started riding again, I guess, in my late 20s. And then there was sort of that, so I started doing that, but realised it was an absolute pain in the arse compared to taking a car. If you think about a car, you just get into it with your keys and everything's in it. Whereas when you go riding on a bike, you've got to think, oh, Did I charge my lights? Where's my lock? Which bike this? Oh no, the tyre's flat. Oh, I'm going to be late now. Then you're out riding, you're getting hot and sweaty, and you're not going to, not doing the right thing to go to a date or to a business meeting or all that. So there's all these. You had to be fairly committed to do it. And then I travelled in 2012 to Copenhagen, and I actually studied sustainable cities, and that was probably where I got this passion for making a difference to cities. Because one of the leading people in that is in Perth, a guy called Peter Newman. So I studied under him because I thought he's the man in this space. And then I thought, all these cities we talked about, I've got to go and see them. So I went and travelled and saw Oslo, Copenhagen, Stockholm, eco-villages like Freiburg in Germany, or Verboen in Freiburg. And I'm like, wow, these places, they're Western people like us, they look like you and me, they ride everywhere, And the story of Copenhagen's fantastic because it almost did a transition to become the most, cycled city in the world in a 10-year period. So it can go from similar to what Perth's at to something phenomenal in a very short period of time with the right sort of people involved in driving it. So when I was there, I was looking at it thinking, that's amazing. And then I think that's the thing for me is you could see where this was going. And then not long after that, electrics started to appear on the horizon. And electrics do a whole lot of stuff because when you look at our bike, we've added stuff into it that you probably wouldn't put on a pedal bike because it would make it too heavy for people to ride. So then there's this unique opportunity. You've got this new technology that's coming out, and when you actually look at that whole thing that startups talk about of let's solve all these problems for people, there's this unique opportunity, and so that was sort of the impetus for starting Tiller Rides.
So how did you start?
I was actually doing a consulting job, and they sort of took me to do this interview in Portugal, brought me back and said, just wait for 6 weeks until we sign the contract. And I was like, all right. So then I decided I couldn't take another job because they'd said, we'll engage you. And then a guy moved into my front room of my house. I used to rent it out like Airbnb style. He was a 3D modeller. I had these sort of ideas, and then just this window of 6 weeks I thought I had to just explore it. So I started mucking around with it. He started modelling. I didn't even know how to do half of what we do today, and less than half. And then, we basically started playing with these ideas and then put a group together, which I called Design Advisory Group, because I thought, I know I've got these problems, but are other people out there in the world got these same problems? So these were 16 local people that also rode, and they had to ride for transport, not for recreation.
Okay.
So they would turn up, we would put breakfast on a Saturday morning. We did it once a month for about 5 months. And then in the meantime, we would do more research, and the RAC here has done amazing research on cycling. Around the world you can see these problems everyone faces, but there wasn't a solution out there. And actually the sort of bit of a backstory is in 2010 when I was running Days of Change, I said to the guys, let's find a bike that I can ride to work from Maylands into the city here, and then the rest of the team can use it all day to go to meetings, and myself. It just didn't exist. There was nothing with all this stuff built in. And so I was like, sure. I mean, I was like dead sure someone would have done it, and they hadn't. And then when I looked again in 2015, the only company that I could see innovating was a company called Van Moof, which is from Amsterdam. And they were integrating lights, and that was about it. And then you're like, oh, okay. Now, they've actually done quite a bit. But if I'm straight, we're the two companies that are really thinking about urban transport solving problems, and the rest kind of aren't doing that. So that guy and I and another guy who's I guess you'd call him an artist or a graphic designer, we sort of got together regularly. I set up in the backyard of the house. There's a little studio that we started the whole thing in, built a workshop underneath the house. Once we got the concept sort of decided by the end of 2015, after all those workshops and what have you, and it wasn't full time then, the response from it was phenomenal. And then I was like, and I had sold a house, so I had a little bit of money sort of in this bank account, which was going to go to a house, but you ask yourself, should I give this a crack? Would I regret it if I don't? And I thought, all right, so I threw in paid work. The contract still wasn't signed at the end of 2006. I said, you can keep it. And so then I just went off. Ray joined the team, who's the co-founder, and he's, interestingly, he's in his 60s, which is rare to see sort of younger people and older people do co-founding thing, but that was actually bit of the success factor. And then off we went, and there's some guys here, they joined the team not long after that, and now we've kind of kept going, I guess 4.5 years later. So
one of the things I think that's interesting that you mentioned is you started with a problem, and then you tried to solve the problem, rather than going, we're going to start with a bike and start adding all these features to it, which I guess is what the incumbent bike manufacturers are doing. Yeah,
and I think, I mean, I listen to people, but I think the Jobs and the Apple thing said you should work on a problem that you also face yourself, which I quite like, because we did that. And most of the guys on the team, or the guys and girls on the team, all write, and I kind of like to ask them that when they're involved, because they're passionate about it, also because they understand the problem. I guess the other bike manufacturers, they're doing different things. There's obviously mountain bikes and all that, but in urban transport, probably because a lot of the bigger markets are the US and what have you, and transport's not a big thing there, they're solving problems that are not urban transport problems. But I still can't explain why the big brands in Europe that are urban transport brands haven't innovated a lot. I have my theory on why that is, but they still haven't innovated a lot. So, I mean, our one big innovation is that frame. So, like you said, we started from the ground up. We actually didn't even set out to build an electric bike. The research clearly shows that if you have electrics, people will use it more and go a lot further. And everyone we've met does that, including me. I've had one of our prototypes for a year and a bit. My car does 2,000 kilometres a year instead of 10, and it just goes everywhere. Like, people expect me to turn up on a bike now. So, and I don't even think about it. Put your jeans on, nice pants, that's it, just go. And I think that's, I don't know if that's a difference with the big companies. There's probably other factors in there. So.
And they're probably attached to their traditional products.
And they've got massive.
That's it. It's all supply chain and manufacturing, and and as much as they think they're close to the customer, they're not.
Well, that's interesting. They probably do think they're close. I would say, from my days of consulting, especially and working within big business, is that a lot of consultants say we're going to come in and teach a company how to innovate. And they go in there and they do these workshops and all this kind of stuff, and they leave and nothing happens. It's almost like a big company and innovation are like allergic to each other. And I think with us, we're kind of lucky. We're small, we're a bit edgy, we've got innovative people involved. And I guess it's a bit of a challenge for us as we go forward to make sure we don't lose that. But we can make a decision in a day and make something completely different. Whereas I think once you're too ingrained and too big, you get people that aren't taking risks, they're not prepared to back themselves. And I think that's why I looked at it, because I've thought about it a bit. We're obviously taking on bigger brands, quite big brands. I don't think they're innovating for starters, and I don't think they're going to catch up, because to jump, for example, to a frame like that, we've been to China quite a few times trying to find people to do the frame. The first visits were with people that make these mainstream type frames, and they just could not get their head around this thing. They were telling us, can we just put plastic covers over and put a normal tube frame inside? And we were literally standing there going, like, are we missing something here? Like, we're actually making a mistake, but we'd built them, we'd tested them, we knew they worked, so we knew they were wrong. But you can see that energy in the whole ecosystem that's there to pull you back into what everyone else does. And it takes a bit of guts actually as well to resist that. So,
and Clay Christensen says this in The Innovator's Dilemma, right? Is that every large business is always under threat of disruption, because business as usual and delivery and all the mechanics that you go through doesn't allow you to then go, oh, let's come up with something different and radical and new and solves a different problem. So you fundamentally, you can't do it, right? Which is really, really hard. So how did you go from a 3D model to what we see behind us today?
It's a lot of, I'd call it R&D. A lot of it is just making mistakes. I mean, I can't actually remember the insight to make this type of frame, but basically making it beautiful and heaps of the features that we had determined we wanted to have in it was the two things. And pretty much the bikes out there today, you've either got to have, you have a beautiful bike, you look at the fixies and all that sort of style, everyone pulls all the stuff off it. So the beautiful bikes, this is all a bit sort of general, there's probably some out there that'll prove me wrong, but or you have a beautiful bike with everything bolted on. If you want lights, you can bolt them on. If you want a lock, you can get that bolted on. You can get everything you want bolted on. But two things, you've got to bolt it on, doesn't look very good, and then you've got to do all that research into all those things to bolt it on. So the innovation really was we had to create a monocoque frame, and all cars, if you sort of look at history, like Dad knows a lot about the racing car history, they were all made of tubes back in the late 60s, 70s. Then they moved to these monocoque things, which for interest's sake is monocoque is like one shell in French. So the shell of that bike is actually the thing that carries all the loads, but it creates a hollow space and we can put all the things inside that we want. And that determined what we had to do. So then we had to go and work out how do you actually make that. And in Perth, and this sort of gets back to the whole manufacturing story of where's manufacturing going in Australia, there was no one really that could help us to create that frame. There was no heat treating people, we couldn't buy the aluminium here, there was almost no advice. So the 2016 year, we built one bike in that entire year, and 50% of that time was working out how to make the frame. So it was, how do you form a shape like that? No one could answer that, so we just kept playing with different ideas. And eventually someone said, oh, there's a guy down in Rockingham who hammers frames into these kind of shapes to fix MGs, because they've got aluminium parts on them. And I'm like, oh. And then I rang him and he said, oh, that's great, come down. And so I put this thing on the back of the ute and brought it down, and he helped us form it. And then eventually and another guy who knew about heat treating other things. He just built a sculpture for Rio Tinto in aluminium, and heat treated that. So all these little pieces, but it took a year to do. And by the end of 2016, we built the first prototype, and that then was like, okay, this thing works. All the models said that it will survive the lifetime that it has to, and it just sort of went on from there. So that answers the question. So
end of 2016.
Yep.
You've got one.
Got one. Yeah.
That's not really
not with
a
all the
sustainable
features
business,
on it.
Is it?
I mean,
No.
it's got less than 50% of the features that we wanted.
Yep.
But that's another lesson in startups. Just get something out that's kind of roughly sells the concept, because we knew we weren't selling that, but that allowed us to then we started recruiting a board that was interested in being involved. Then we pre-sold in 2017 a whole bunch of them, and they were looking at that prototype, and on the wall was what the vision was for the future. And they just had to take a leap of faith that if they pre-ordered that one, they'd get that one down the track. And we did something smart in terms of we kept their money in a holding account so they would never lose money, the pre-order people. But the investors, they're just backing an idea, really.
There's someone else that does that quite successfly as well at the moment in the electric vehicle space. Right?
Well, he's doing all right, though.
Yeah. So, I mean, and that is that thing, right? Yeah. You take a whole bunch of pre-orders, for the Tesla truck at $150 a go, which is next to nothing.
Yeah, right. That's less than what we charge.
Yeah. But then all of a sudden you can go out and you can go, well, we've got all these pre-orders. Yeah. Even if 50% of them drop away,
that's right.
You can still raise money and you can still get people on the journey to where you need to get to.
Yeah. And the thing that does, which is actually really powerful, is it does do the investor piece, but it does, all of us actually have been out selling bikes, because our team, we've got a lot of designers and engineers people, but there's a period we just had to go and sell bikes. So we're all out there, and it was really good because you actually suddenly have to talk to people about these features that you're designing, and you find out what they think.
Yeah, so you break that assumption really quickly. When you're really close to the product, you go, this is what we need to do, but you have to constantly get that feedback.
And that pre-order thing forces you back into the market again, even though you've we did it in 2017, but pretty much that was me, so the new team hadn't done that. So then when we did the pre-order campaign last year and sold whatever we sold, 100 and something in 2 or 3 months, that everyone was out there talking to people. And I think Sam hated it, but it was he did a very good job.
It's a learning exercise.
Yeah. But I think, and I remember even with Rob, the guy, the head of our production, we had this one, we were down at the markets in Kyela, which is north of Perth here. And this one guy just came up and it was just, this is what I've been looking for my whole life. And he pretty much, I don't think he ordered it on the phone, but if he could have, he would order it right there and then. I think one guy did order it on the phone right there and then. And that's the sort of thing I think gives you this sense of momentum within yourself to keep it going as well. So you can't just exist in a vacuum for many reasons, because you won't sell them, you won't sell to investors, and even with yourself, you've got to be sure you're on the right path, I think.
So, so the ordering, right, and I guess the business model around it.
The pre-ordering one, or you mean?
Yeah. So what's your intention with that? You know, is it, do you want to control everything and people come to your website and order it and it gets delivered and, you know, a bit like the Tesla kind of model? Or do you want to go down, you know, premium bike shops that might hold the stock for you? Or even, given that you're solving this issue around urban transport, do you want to get, you know, maybe City of Perth? Those type of people could be a retail arm for you as well.
I think we're not restricting it down to, but so this is a little bit based on, over the years, cousins, girlfriends, a few people, especially women actually, have asked me to come and help them at a bike shop to buy a bike for them, mainly just to get around. And when I go in there, the way I'd explain it is you walk in and it's a mess. There's stuff everywhere. There's bikes everywhere, there's a wall of helmets over there, and there's a wall of lights there, and a wall of locks, and then random accessories everywhere. And then there's often manned by men, and they don't use their bikes for transport. They use them for mountain biking or racing or something. And it's just not the environment I would send someone in who wants to buy a product like ours. And so then we went, I don't think that's actually the right people to represent our product and talk to our customers in the right way. So that sort of wrote that off. But I'm not saying no if I didn't feel like they were a good fit, but I just want the right experience. And when you think about an Apple shop, looks a bit like this place actually, but you know, you go in there and there's one product, it's not full of stuff. There's a person that knows what they're talking about, and they kind of understand you. That's what really we want the experience to be. So if it comes out the way we think it might, there's going to be two parts. One is the online sales. And we put a lot of effort into, you know, the videos and all the explanations that you get that you'd need to ride one of these or own one. And then it actually gets delivered to your house, or either directly by our sort of delivery system in a metro area. But it obviously would go through a different freight company externally. But the whole idea is that it's easy for you. You can order this thing online. There's very few decisions to make. You choose your colour. Do you want, the front carrier sort of comes standard, but do you want it or not? And there's a couple of other things. So there's very little decision making. It arrives at your house. So you don't have to go down the shop and then work out, how do I get this thing back to my house? Because how are you going to do that? Most people don't have the ability to carry an e-bike. It's even worse for an e-bike. So actually you think about the customer problem of all the way through from, you know, wanting one all the way through to getting it. The design of the bike's only part of that. There's actually the whole delivery and servicing and what have you. So when we talk to people, they want to be serviced at home if they can. So that whole thing where you just, you know, you've got your product, it doesn't work now, and then we're designing our app and our systems as well to report back to us what the problems are, so we hopefully can solve some externally. And then we'll know, like, even if it's like in the middle of whoop whoop, okay, it's the battery, just send us that back and we'll sort that out. We might even just send another one straight out. So we've thought about the plug and playness of the parts of it as well already, so that it's kind of designed for that delivery and servicing, not via an online system. Now, in big cities, we probably will end up with brand stores of some sort, or in partnership with someone. So, you know, partner with a cafe or something like that, so that we're actually got, but it's got to be the right type of people. Maybe we'll partner with IKEA, I don't know. But we sort of look at it through that lens of, are they delivering stuff in the same way with the same customer service ethos, I guess. So
you mentioned something there about like bigger cities. I'm curious to know, like Amsterdam, you know, where there's a culture of riding bikes and getting around. I'm assuming Copenhagen's the same and those things. Because, you know, in Australia, and particularly in Perth, we're so spread out, do you think that brings any challenges for what, or advantages for what people are trying to do and why they need something like this?
Well, it certainly makes it easier. If you've spread out, it actually makes it easier to get around a city like Perth or Australian cities. I was interviewed by Sydney Morning Herald the other day, and it was all about congestion and all the problems they're having over in Sydney, which we have here. And then they're going, well, we're spending all this money on freeways. What else could we do? And they're starting to see that e-bikes might be a solution, because yes, there's scooters, but they have a bit of a limited distance, and they're good for certain things. There's e-bikes in the middle there which have this range that other transport, and most people are comfortable riding them. If you actually were to map out, say for example Sydney, when we had this conversation, you said, right, you know, if everyone, so half an hour is apparently the magic amount of time for a commute. If you can do a half an hour, most people are happy with that. It's a global standard. I think it's something psychological. And And so then if you go 5-minute train ride and say a 20-minute ride, there's a circle you can put around a train station, and then you go a 20-minute train ride and a 10-minute circle around that kind of thing. You can almost cover, 50, 60, 70% of Australian cities just by doing that. Now you'll see that already happening in Amsterdam. The big problem they've got is how many bikes they're parking at train stations.
Yeah.
If you just Google Amsterdam train stations, you'll see piles of bikes. I think there's some places with 70,000 bikes that arrive every day. So I think e-bikes actually make it easier in Australia, but it is easier again if you've got a compact city like you have in Europe. So I think we'll be massively surprised what happens with e-bikes in Australia, because we've got the weather generally. We've got a whole bunch of things going for us. I think you'll get the uptake in Europe is well beyond. I mean, there's 40% of bike sales in Holland now are electric. Now, that's great because but they've even got flat cities and they're quite compact. So I think Australia will surprise us what happens here. But for us, it's not the big market. I mean, we're really here because we're from here. I think it's a great place to develop what we're doing. It's very well connected to China. We're in the same time zone, all that kind of stuff. They have a massive issue. We've got people on our team that are back in Switzerland and places like that. It's a massive issue, them dealing with their manufacturers. So it's a great spot to do the development. You can do a lot of your digital marketing from here, all that kind of stuff. It's a great place to live for people that want to be in a creative industry. That's partly why we're down in Freo. And then we can sell to the world. And I think our big market is going to be Europe and those cities. And a lot of people say that style will be loved by a lot of those sort of designer type towns.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So as you're going through this process and you're kind of stretching everything out that you're doing and and getting all this user feedback, the equity crowdfunding campaign, how'd you go with that? And what are some of the, because I think there's this perception out there a lot of the time that people go, oh, I'll just get my product, I'll take some nice pictures and I'll put it on a website and all of a sudden we'll raise $500,000 or $1 million. So what was your experience and what do you think you did that really helped you with the success that you got out of that?
It's a good question. I mean, one step back a little bit is equity crowdfunding is not for every business. So the way it came across at my desk anyway from one of our board members back in 2018, they changed the rules so that PTY Ltd companies could do it here in Australia. It's very popular overseas. I think the UK has been doing it for a long time, 4 or 5 years. So it came on our list of how are you going to raise money? You've got a few options. And I guess for us, we were right at the point where we thought, okay, we've been out there selling bikes and talking to people. We have a partnership with the RAC, which took the brand, quite big around WA. But now our next stage is to grow the company across Australia. And we thought, okay, well, this thing would deliver multiple. If we go down this avenue, because I've got to say, when you start doing the research on equity crowdfunding and go and speak to other people, they say you're going to commit, if you're the founder especially, because you've got to sort of put yourself out there a lot, 2 months, 3 months of your life, almost full time. It's not going to be, it's not just a little part-time thing you can do. I can raise money at the moment, probably 20 or 30% of my time, but equity crowdfunding is full on. So to commit to it, we needed to get many other benefits. So what we decided was we wanted to build our brand across Australia, so that was a win-win. We wanted to sell bikes, and so the platform we use, Birchal, has this thing called a reward. Again, we chose that platform because that's what we wanted to do. We wanted to get more sales and more bikes, because once the bikes start arriving from China, we want as many on the road as possible because they sell themselves because they're out on the road. So that was part of the strategy. And then we just decided that it's going to cost us quite a bit of money because it's like, just making the video, for example, which is the centerpiece of your whole campaign. If you don't put a lot of effort into that and it becomes, all of that was what I guess raised that money. I'd say the winning thing was the sort of video. We have a really great person on our digital marketing. Literally is only 2.5 days a week. But she prepares it all, she's very organised, she fires all the stuff out. Constant rework every day. What's the message now? Okay, people have done this, so now we need to change the message to this. And so you can't just do it, it's not a part-time thing. And then the rewards for us were very powerful because for $10,000 they got shares and a bike.
And a bike, yeah.
And you know, in a way, it's another pre-sales campaign. So that 56 or 58 people took up that offer. So now we've got to deliver those. But yeah, it's not actually a cheap way of raising money for us, but it delivered lots of other value, which we would say is good value for money. So that was how we justified it.
Yeah. So I keep looking at it. Where'd the name Tiller come from?
Yeah, there's a long and short story on all these things. The short story is, I guess from that thing when I had that first engineering job, and I was sitting there thinking, why is it that I just can't stand working here? Just building conveyor belts all day. And over the next 10 years, I changed jobs and did a bunch of different things. And then I worked out when I went to companies where there was a bit of heart and soul in what they did, it was great. Like I just loved it, and I wanted to be part of that vision and make a difference. And then I guess somewhere in the last 10 years, someone wrote a poem about steering a ship, you know, as a good metaphor for a business or a life is a ship. And I just sort of put the two together, and I thought, well, actually what I want to do is create a business that's got the heart on the tiller of the ship, steering it, you know. And really that's what we're about. We're about getting people out of cars, improving their health and well-being and reducing their footprint on the planet. And that is what we look at everything through. So, you know, we write design documents, and the things have to be recyclable, you know, up to a certain point. We can't be perfect yet, but we have to achieve all these goals. It's inbuilt. I mean, I'm passionate about it, but it's inbuilt into the DNA of the business. And we often debate, like, how passionate does someone have to be involved in the business? But you kind of sense it when they're part of it. You know, you don't have to be as passionate as me, because that's a little bit asking too much. But yeah, that's the Tiller story.
Well, I think it's really interesting, because I think, you know, the model of working for organisations used to be about the brand and the status that it held, I think. So, you know, kids come out of school and out of uni and go, I'll go to a big consulting organisation or a big brand. And, you know, I don't see that anymore. People come out of school and university and they go, what's your purpose?
Yeah.
Right? And I think you're in a really good position, you know, where people do align with that purpose. You know, solving the problem of this, rather than we just want to be the biggest monolithic organisation that makes shitloads of money around the world. So I think it is becoming inherently part of the businesses of today and the future as well, especially in the startup space.
I think so. And what I found interesting, because I mean, being someone who's wanted to make a difference with my work my whole life, if I'm honest, I felt like I was a little bit different than most my mates that, say for example, the engineers that left. A lot of them are still in that game, the oil and gas and mining game. And they don't really love what they do, but they actually don't know what else they would do. That's what they say to me. Like, and these guys, some of them, they've got machining shops in the back of their houses, and they used to work late at night on our project and help us do a lot of stuff. So, you know, really good people who can get passionate about things, but are not really sure what their thing is. And I think, I mean, got some of the guys here today, but the calibre of our board and our team is phenomenal, and I think it's partly because of this higher purpose. And we talk a lot about, the chairman, co-founder and I talk a lot about, you know, people need to be emotionally intelligent to be involved in what we're doing, because it just makes, we don't have a lot of issues, because people, no one's trying to dominate a board meeting or dominate a design meeting or anything, you know. I don't know how you explain it, but that higher purpose of the business, I think actually is a critical success factor. And I mean, Branson and people would agree with this, but I think you can actually make potentially much more money, because of, you avoid a lot of the pitfalls that you'll have to go through if it's just, you know, turnover, for example, is a massive cost for businesses. And I know Simon Sinek and all those people, there's all these sort of famous TED Talks now about people really want to do something they're passionate about. But there's actually not a lot of opportunities. That's what I've found, especially for engineers. You know, we get some interesting people just ring us up, and we advertise, and we get this, if I'm honest, just like a bunch of vanilla applications. And then, so we ended up with a guy from Dyson, for example, who was on our team last year. And we did this little thing where you had to sort of go to, if you heard about it on Seek, you had to go to our website. We make a little bit of a contorted path. And you had to do something, I can't remember what it was back then. Now it's a video, but they had to do something and write why they want to be part of the business. And so I wake up on Monday morning after advertising on Friday night, and there's this one email. no one else had followed that. Everyone else had just clicked apply on Seek. And we read it. Anyway, long story short, this guy's become, an integral part of the business. He's not with us now, but he's passionate to come back. If he didn't have a girl in England, he'd be back here now, and he might come back. You never know. So, but he's passionate about what we're doing, and now he's doing climate change work in England for now. But we just built this wonderful group of people. The board members, for example, and Reese is here, and these guys haven't been paid cash for nearly 3 years. I don't know how long it's been. 3 years, nearly. So I think coming up to the third year. Now they all know they got some shares and options or whatever, but and a lot of them have invested their own money as well. And it's a bit like this, giving first. That's sort of what this whole thing succeeded on.
So what's next? Roll forward. You've got to get your manufacturing done.
Well,
slight issue with a virus in China at the moment.
Yeah, it's not affecting us just yet.
Yep.
I just got an email from one of our people today, and they said, "No, we're back. We're back on." We were just online with the manufacturer last Tuesday, and they're back online. We're just finding out how their sub-suppliers are going, but the Chinese government's pretty good. You can imagine they go, "Nah, you're shut. If you do X, Y, and Z, you can open." So our company's done that. Everyone's got the precautions on and what have you. We're in the south just outside of Shenzhen, which is not anywhere near the big outbreak. And one of my sort of assistants in Hong Kong, and she said she doesn't even walk around with a mask, So I don't know if that's going to affect us. We'll see how that plays out. But the next bit is there is silence in the office almost for design refinements to get this ready for the tooling that goes to build the bike.
Yep.
That is like entire focused. We've got to raise a bit more money to get through this next phase. Then we plan to roll them out here. The next place we plan to roll out is in Melbourne.
Yep.
Because we've already and that was another thing with the equity crowdfunding. They were based in Melbourne, and we've got connections there. A lot more riding goes on there. So Melbourne and Perth, and in a way, we're trying to use Perth and Melbourne as our test cases for this online selling and servicing system. Then the plan is, and we will need to raise money to move to Europe. So depending on what we decide to do late next year, we'll then expand to the rest of Australia. The rest of Australia can get bikes, but they'll have to post them back if they want them serviced for the first year. And then it's off to Europe. And Europe is really the big goal for us. And I'm half Italian, so I'm looking forward to that phase of it.
Is that the good half?
What's that?
Is that the good half?
Yes, I'm sure. The design half, the engineer half, Croatian. So, but we'll go there, and then I guess, again, be quite strategic about where we roll it out. But good advice I've actually got through some of the startup mornings, the startup meetup at Space Cube was about don't go and expand to these big markets until you've kind of proven how you're going to roll out there, because it can be exceedingly expensive if you're not sure how to tackle that. So we're seeing Australia as a bit of a prove out of a few things.
And do you want to keep the epicenter and the heart of it here? Or when you start going global, do you feel that you're going to have to go into a different location as the head office, which so often happens in Perth, right?
Yeah, again, it would be a strategic decision. Like if we can't track the talent or what have you here, then it would probably might be the case. But lots of people love coming here. I mean, we can't get Will back from England, for example, but who knows? I don't really know the answer to that. I mean, there's no reason why you couldn't have, you might need some people more in touch with the European side of things at some point. The attention at the moment is to do it from here, but I'm not like, I want to be Australian just for that reason. It'd have to make sense for the business too. So.
And are you getting any help or much help from governments in Australia as well? Because I know, you go to other countries around the world, and governments really get involved in this kind of thing, showcasing talent and products and services to the world. Are you getting much in WA specifically, but also from Australia?
Well, beyond the sort of R&D tax incentive, which we have accessed.
Yep.
No, like really, I actually find it quite interesting because like in the ecosystem, what I call the startup ecosystem, there seems to be a huge amount of momentum, investor interest, whatever, in what's now being called tech. And despite that this has got quite a lot of technology inside it, we don't fall within that because they see a physical product rather than a bit of software. it's a bit of a hard game. Like you can see there's a lot of incubators just for tech. There's a whole lot of investors that just do tech. So it's been a harder struggle than I think other startups have found in some regards, because it's sort of like, and also because cycling isn't a massive thing here in Australia, especially Perth, we've had to sell the dream a little bit of the future, as much as, because they just don't quite get it. So yeah, the government, I don't know. We've got advisors that keep saying, "Is there something out there? Is there something out there?" And the answer is not yet. And I don't actually know. It might. I'm actually a little bit allergic to government stuff, because we move very quickly and make quick decisions. And anything I've had to do with government in the past is this massive load of reporting back, and like, in a way, like I've seen grants like $50,000, and I'm like, the amount of effort I'd have to take to get it, and then when you report back, whatever that's called. I can go and ring someone and raise $50,000. So I'd rather do that, but it's nothing yet. So we'll see. I've heard there is some access out there to sort of find offshore suppliers, and there's a few surprising things out there that are not very well advertised. I only heard that a month ago, so I'm going to look into that.
Yeah, okay. So the product's been sitting over there. So do you want to tell us about it? So, which is always the good thing, right? Because normally people go, let's jump straight into the product rather than explore everything else and then come up with the product.
Yeah.
So what are some of the cool features, apart from the light that I can see over your shoulder, that's integrated? What else you got on there?
Well, I guess the only thing I say high level is it was that beauty, and so the frame obviously is very unique. That's oxymoron, but it's a unique, there's no one else doing that exact thing. So most features you can't see, but little things like a lot of I could sell 5 bikes to 5 women that I know who got their dresses caught in their chain in the last month, all right? So we've got a belt. So the belt basically is clean, low maintenance, and it's, so that solves that problem. We've got a massive battery, so it's the biggest battery in the whole that we know of in the urban. So it does about 80 kilometres on full power. So you can go for a very long way with that. Probably the prize feature for a lot of people is the anti-theft system. So we've built in, it's multiple things. Firstly, the seat. You can't actually steal the seat out of the bike. So it's got quick release. Sometimes you go down the street, especially in the CBD, and you'll see seats missing. But you can't actually take it out of the bike. Then there's a quick tether, which you can pull out. That's a cable you pull out the back of the bike, plug in. That's how you can tether it to a fixed object. And then you arm the bike just by holding a button down, and you've got a motion sensing alarm and a GPS tracking system. So if anyone touches it, they can walk at about 5 metres. If they're mucking around trying to crack the lock, they'll probably set it off. Once that sets off, you can see where it is on your phone, so you can track it. That feature alone, I was actually just coming here with this bike, and someone I ran into at the train station came up to me and said, I just had my bike stolen. And that's maybe 50 of our sales have come from people that want something safer. And then also there's a massive, like a number plate on the bike, and it's registered on our website. So if you owned one, your bike would be registered to your name, and if you wanted to sell it to someone else, you've got to transfer it. So this whole thing...
you're fixing the government's issue where they won't do that normally.
Yeah, that's right. Well,
so you just...
but they grind the number off the bottom, and you won't know who that bike is. You can't do it on ours. And then finally, I guess, the electronics, which we've all designed ourselves, if you steal this in the armed condition, you'll never ride it again as an e-bike. Like, it's just unusable.
It's a bit like an iPhone.
Exactly, exactly. And we look at those products and go, well, that's what they've successfully done. Like, you don't see people stealing phones anymore unless they're unlocked. What are you going to do with it? You're like, it's a brick.
Yeah.
So that's roughly what that's all about. Integrated lights is an obvious thing. Some companies are doing that, but they often put the lights in a position that when you put a carrier on, it blocks it. So that front light actually moves forward and ends up on the carrier, which is, Sam's just finishing that at the moment. And so you can put stuff in it and it doesn't block the lights. Now these are simple things, but you go home and ride along a path at night in the dark. And then the rear carrier system, so a lot of people want to sort of ride to work with a box, say, on the back and put something in it, and then they want to come home and take the kids out. Well, it's got a click on, click off carrier system, so you can swap that in, swap it out. Whereas most bikes, you bolt the baby carrier on and that's it, or you bolt the box on and that's it. You can't do anything else. What else was I going to say? Oh, the double stand. So the other one's a little one, is most bikes come with a single stand. If you put kids on it, if you put food on it, anything, it falls over. And the magic of this for us is you put it on the train, you just sit it there and sit down and the thing will not move. But when you fold it up, it disappears into the bike, so it's like this massive ugly thing hanging under the bike. Other things on there which I think people go out and go, well, I don't want to get a flat tyre. We've got a canister inside the bike that you can blow the tyre up.
Right.
I've never seen that anywhere. And an emergency rain jacket that if it started to rain, like on the way home, I heard some thunder earlier today, you could just whack that on and get home and get dry. So altogether, there's not a bike on the planet that has all that in it. And each one of those features is feedback from customers. It's not something we thought was a good idea. It's really been an iterative process.
Yep.
So,
And it can be yours for the low price of?
well, if
I
you buy
tried
them,
to get a deal done, right, for like a show special. But who's an RAC member?
half of you should put your hands up.
Right, yeah. So you've already got a deal, right, through the RAC if you want one.
Yeah, so
10% off, isn't it?
We partner with them early
Yep.
because they're probably one of the most clearly aligned businesses with what we're doing. And their deal basically is they promote what we're doing and we give RAC members 10% off, not 50%. 10%
Close.
off. However, the long-term price is going to be $490. That's what they'll come out when we actually sell them
Yep.
off the factory floor. But right now, I think they're $4,190 or something. So
Okay.
they've actually crept up $100 a month for the last 6 months. However, what we do, if you bought one, and then someone bought one, so we basically, as soon as you buy one, we send a referral pack out because our selling model is really through the rider community, we call it. And then if someone bought one because of you, you get another $100 off, another $100 off. So we've got people $300 or $500 just because of the. Now they don't actually have a bike to sell yet, but
Yep.
it's just through talking at this point.
Something that's really important, being a F1 fan as well. What's the top speed?
That is not controlled by us, unfortunately. In Australia and Europe, we've taken on the European standard here, and the top speed's 25 k's an hour. Okay. So they peak out, and there's a few people want them faster and whatever. My personal view is to make it a safe product for everyone to get on. You'll notice there's a massive amount of issues now, like in Brisbane and whatever, with the scooters going crazy amount of speed. We don't want that in the e-bike industry. So 25 is a nice speed going past cars, and occasionally on an open road or an open path where there's no one around, I think faster would be fine, but then how do you control that? So I find it a quite good speed for, like I was in Melbourne selling investment last year and we had the bike riding around the streets in the CBD and it was just amazing. The day before I'd ridden one of the share bikes around and it was like the cars are all going past and you sort of feel like a reject. And then on the bike like this, you're out in front of the cars because it pretty much is going as fast as the cars in a CBD sort of area. So so there's no. They do, just interestingly, they do in Europe have a speed pedelec. So this is in the class called a pedelec, which means you've got to pedal before you get power. So there's no actual throttle on it. In Europe, they do 45 kilometres an hour in the pedelecs, speed pedelecs. I think there's about 0.1% of the market are speed pedelecs. So most people are still buying this whatever it's called, the more restrained version.
Safety first kind of model.
Yeah, and I'd be very supportive of the speed pedelec if people do want to, but you can't ride on footpaths.
Yeah.
So that's fair enough.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Cool. Excellent. All right. Can you all put your hands together for Julian, please? Well done. Couple of quick questions before we have a beer and a bit more networking to finish off.
Do you see a future where you might be able to bring manufacturing of the bike to Perth?
It's a good question. We originally sort of thought, well, I mean, I wouldn't say it was the goal. We did kind of know that it probably wasn't going to be something that was possible. We've looked into it the whole time. The complication is that, like for a bikes, every product's different, of course. I think the only way you'd bring it back here if you automated something significantly. So we did an exercise a while back to see, could we, for example, the frame, could we robot weld that? The answer is yes, but it would take so much money to invest to get that set up now that we can't afford to do it in the early stages. But the other side of it is when you speak to the manufacturers up in China, for example, that we've been liaising with, ideally for cost effectiveness and the whole pain in the arse of manufacturing that it can be, you really want your suppliers within half an hour to 2 hours of where you are. And most of the bike parts, and this has got quite a few bike parts off the shelf, they're all in China, they're all Chinese made. So to have that ecosystem around you is actually, it's almost like, because everything's Chinese made, it makes it more sense to make in China. But that's kind of where it is for our product. But I am still, and I think we're still looking to see, what could we do here? I don't know, we'll see what happens. But that's the current situation, so yeah.
Julian, when do you expect that they'll be on the shelves? Like when will they be ready?
Later this year. The interesting thing we're budgeting out the whole rest of the year late last year, and the first 200 will go straight out to the pre-sales people. And that's the first 2 months of production, and there's going to be a gap of a month while we check the quality of the first lot, so there's like 3 months delay there. So it's probably going to be around November, December they'll be like able to be sold directly to people. So the pre-order people will get first preference, and the investors that invested and got the reward. So let's say end of this year. That's the current plan. So yeah.
Do you have any patents?
We don't have any patents. We engaged a IP company in Perth. I won't mention names, I guess, we'll see, but they're...
Depends, are they good?
They are very good, and they're involved in the startup community, and they're called Raise. And they did a lot of work with this in the beginning, and these are the kind of things that I think really makes a difference to this community. There's some people in the room that do this. I took the bike in there 5 times before we paid them anything. In fact, they didn't even get us to pre-sign something. And we worked through an IP strategy. And it turns out that there is one thing we wanted to patent on this, which was the frame style. And Porsche, well, the guy Porsche, did it back in the 60s. And once it's got prior art, you can't do it. So, but it doesn't matter because no one's using it. And it was actually patented for another use. But we can't patent that. And then a little story that I found interesting, the head of Cisco Southeast Asia, or might have been the Asia Pacific region, was at one of our investor meetings, ex-CEO, and he said, look, spending money on patents doesn't make sense in certain areas. Like if you've got an algorithm or something, then you go and patent that. But products like this, if they can do that 10%, 20% change, it's very difficult to do anything about it. So what we've done is we've chosen a manufacturer, for example, because, manufacturer doesn't work in the bike industry. So we're not going to end up with IP leakage just by the pure fact that all these other people are making our parts. So there's a whole bunch, there's more to it than that. So we've actually registered the design of it, which is the shape and the look of it. We've registered our brand name and the word Tiller. So no one will ever be able to sell something that looks like that and has the word Tiller on it in our target markets. But the patenting side of it, we just eventually went through everything that was available and went, you will never be able to defend that with enough money. And we decided not to do that and went down other paths. So that's why I find patents are good in certain areas, but if you get a good patent company, but in their company they've got an engineer. So that was what I really liked. He understood the technical side, and then we'd look at the patents that were out there and the ones we could get through that engineering eye. And we do other things, I guess, now. So,
Question.
Basically with your crowdfunding, were you surprised at the response you got to that, and how is that going to help with your next phase?
absolutely not. We thought it was underwhelmed. No, no, it was. I mean, I don't know. I mean, because we work on this, there's one part of me is a little bit surprised because, we did find that probably 6 out of 10 or 7 out of 10 investors we speak to only invest in tech. But because we're going out to everyday Australians that are looking at it as a business, a great story, a whole bunch of other factors that they put into it, we all talk about Hills Hoist and all these things. Like I got the person who helps me, I said, can you go and find a mentor, this is 2 weeks ago, that's built a product in the last, physical product and sold it globally. She hunted for 4 or 5 hours. She said, there's no one in Australia that's really done this kind of thing. And I was like, really? And then I had a little look and I couldn't find anything either. And I think, so there was a little bit of like, we're doing something quite unique. Some people obviously find that a bit of a risk, but the everyday people like, wow, this is fantastic. So equity crowdfunding is a lot about selling the dream and the story, and I don't think people are actually looking at it with as much detail in terms of what an investor might do, but they do look at it and go, are these people decent? Have they got a decent idea? You know, can I see there's potential for this? And then they invest. So we did set the target at 2.4 and we got in at 1.065. So we're still obviously, that's why we're raising a bit more now. So, but it is the biggest raise, I think, in WA or something like that. So of equity crowdfunding up to now. So I think we were, and the issue we had a little bit was we couldn't actually set it much lower, or we couldn't have kept going. So we had this moment with the board and everything and said, well, do you think you're going to get to this tally of 900, which is our minimum? And the Birchall actually said, well, I don't think so. With the interest that we got in the EOI campaign, we had about $2.4 million worth of interest or something. They said normally you get like actual investors is only 20 or 30% of that. So you'd safely raise 600 or 700. So set it at that if you like. And I said, well, I can't do anything with $700,000. So we set it high and just went for it. And I think that's, yeah, so we were thrilled, that's for sure. Well, that basically pays for all this, what we're doing now and all the production line setup. And really the extra bit we're raising is we've got to order bikes, we've ordered 500 bikes, and then we've got to actually pay for a lot of them up front before we start getting them back here. And, you know, 500 bikes is over $1 million just worth of orders. So it's a cash flow issue in these beginnings when you actually haven't got cash coming in. So, and that also then helps us set up and do the whole, because right now we're doing almost no marketing and sales. We did that all last year and we just haven't got the money to do it. So when we raise a bit more money, we'll use some of that to keep the sales ticking along. So by the end of the year, there'll probably be 300 pre-sales, so you have to wait 3 months. So you could all be part of that if you like.
So, Jules, you would say that going out to find more funding now has been a fair bit easier?
It has been. That's another thing, actually, I'd say, is that momentum builds momentum, you know, and I don't know how much you share about these things, but I'm on the phone today with basically 3 investors that can take out the full 1.5 million. So we think. Nothing's obviously in stone until the money's in the bank. We've learnt that too. But the amount of interest that came out of after the equity crowdfunding. I mean, I was riding around the streets of Melbourne in the middle of it. I think it was in the middle of it. Only after about 4 weeks of the actual campaign, because you do 4 weeks of expression of interest, then you do 4 weeks of actual raise. And I think it was somewhere in the middle there, and people were stopping on the street. You know, like, oh, we've seen you on Facebook. I've got to tell you, Facebook is where all the money was made. I didn't realise that. We did a LinkedIn campaign and got some investors that way. Again, no one's really ever done that before with Birchall, so we taught them a little bit about that, or someone taught us and we taught them. So people watching this, LinkedIn and Facebook were the 2 avenues where most of the investors came through. So retail investors, Facebook; sophisticated investors, LinkedIn. And now it's just, like Rob said, it's, you know, there's people ringing us and can we invest and all that kind of stuff. So
Cool.
There's a question.
one more.
Yeah, I've been looking at collaborative transport and that in communities and stuff, and it seems like this bike's got enough class to it to say, you know how there's these car systems and that where you can lock into the car, drive it, leave it, somebody else comes along and takes it. But you can have 2
Like a car
bikes
share.
sitting around, and maybe even with a membership or something, they charge $2 to ride it, and you get 1,000 people riding. But also, you can take the car dealership. What's their name? You know, they're closing the car dealerships down.
Is that right? Okay.
Holden. Oh,
Yeah, right.
I'm senior. But I think of the tuk-tuks in Bangkok.
Yeah.
Now you could build these electric tuk-tuks that had the same class.
Styling. Yeah. Well, you probably just, if you want to hear a little about that, our product direction is not set, by the way, but designing for car share or bike share is a different design problem. If you look at most bike shares, very simple, really heavy, solid rubber tyres, a whole bunch of things they do. So that's not, this bike won't end up in a bike share system like this. What we've got a lot of interest from is fleet bikes. So in terms of a company that would have these, the staff use them to get around the CBD. We've got 4 orders just from one company outside of the CBD to get in and out. Because you've got to have a sense of ownership, because this is a bike. If you throw it on the ground and treat it really roughly, you'll wreck it. But when we think about the future products, we look at where things are going. Our next products are probably going to be something like a 3-wheeler, which is very popular in Europe now, where you've got 2 on the front. You can put kids, dog, food, everything in the front. So you get that extra capacity, because a lot of people buy bikes, then they have kids and they stop riding again. So we've specifically put lots of carrying capacity on this, so you can put a kid's baby seat, and then you've got a little other seat that clicks on that you can hold on to, so you can get kids right through. But if you've got 2 kids and mum or dad taking 2 kids, that's it, this bike's no good. So the 3-wheeler, and then we're sort of looking beyond that. There might be, like you're saying, something more commercial. We'll look at that. There's a lot of people looking at 3-wheelers that you can now deliver the last mile for companies like FedEx and whatever. They can't actually park now and deliver their stuff in a lot of towns because there's no parking. So they want to go along the footpath. There's a huge expanse, and we might even then go down to scooters. Rob, who's just walked away, he's got a 3-wheeler scooter electric, which he gets to work on because he can put it on the train or bus. You can't do that with that. So there's going to be a whole group depending on what you're trying to do and how far you're trying to go.
I've lived in Thailand a lot, and you don't have to have a car because there's always somebody going by with a motorbike or
Yeah.
if there's 3 of you together, for instance, then
Yeah.
you tuk-tuk.
Well, they're definitely going to become electric in the
They're
future.
very characteristic too, though. You know, they give a culture to the.
Yeah.
To you
Yep.
get around.
Regarding your crowdfunding campaign, can you share with us the name of the company that you choose, why you choose this particular platform,
Yep.
and because now it's closed, so people can now have a look what you get, what you propose in return
Yep.
for
Yep.
your fundraising. So can you explain?
Yeah. So we chose a company called Birchall. Birchall's based in Melbourne.
Okay.
The reason why we chose them, probably the main reason, was they had a lot of experience. Birchall's actually, the founders of Birchall are actually part of the Possible group. So Possible's all about raising money for causes and that kind of thing. And because we've got a bit of a higher purpose to what we're doing, we thought they understood that a lot more when we spoke to them. A lot of the other crowdfunding platforms are basically, they're fundraising companies have then got into, whereas Birchall's the opposite. They used to raise money, now they've got into equity crowdfunding. So there's downsides and upsides. You know, they're not particularly well connected with investors, so you've got to find them yourself. But they've got this massive network now because they've done quite a few campaigns successfully. The other reason we chose them is they were in Melbourne, and we knew that a lot of people interested in bikes and what we're doing are in Melbourne. So we've got a lot of investors there now, which is advocates for when we hit the ground. So we're going to hit the ground running in all these towns, all these cities, because we've got all these people engaged.
So you're making sure it's because the industry, pretty much.
Yeah, and the other side of it is Birchall offer these rewards, and they allow you to say, if you invest X, we'll give you this reward. And their platform, because it's all online, is set up for that. And because we thought that was our goal, is to actually get some product out there as part of this, we had to do that. And it turns out, I've spoken to other people that have equity crowdfunded in Perth, that there's a lot of things that, like for example with Birchall, we actually had access to the database of everyone who's expressed an interest. So we can market directly to them and say, okay, we've now hit this target, are you interested now? Because it's a social program. Like our sort of crowdfunding went up like this, and then in the middle weeks, it flatlined. Like a couple of days we got 0, in this 4-week period. You're sitting there, and the guys know, like we had a graph on the table behind where I sat. I was like, God,
what's going on?
And then the last week it picked up a bit, and then all these like $100,000 investors just appeared in the last 3 or 4 days, and then the last day, I think it was like 50 people invested, and we got over another couple of $100,000 out of that. So it's really you've got to keep communicating backwards and forwards, and I think I was told that some of the other platforms don't allow you to have access to the database of people, Whereas because we're really, I'd say, we're fairly talented at the whole marketing and digital stuff, we wanted to have access to that. So
Thank you.
that's the main reason.
Cool. Oh,
Last one.
last one. Last one.
So, in relation with overseas manufacturing, of course, there are many challenges. So, apart from the virus and the IT concerns, do you have any ongoing or future concerns, and how are you managing it in the future? So, are you stationing someone, for example, over in China to oversee the process, or are you flying that back and forward just to make sure the production process goes as smooth as possible?
We're in the early stage of setting up that. So how it all works out with our manufacturer, we'll have to see because we haven't got the tooling started as yet. I guess the only thing that we've been over there and we've seen what they've done and what they can do. And why we chose them is they build for high-end Western brands, I guess you'd call it. And the products we've seen them make, there's one that's very similar to what we do. And it's phenomenal, like the quality and the way they test it and everything. So we haven't got any concerns on that front. I guess the only thing, and we haven't worked out this yet, is there's a few things we're doing, and I'll just say the main thing is the frame. No one's done that yet. So if you want to say what our concern is, was let's see how that all goes when we start actually putting the tooling together, welding this thing together, put it through a heat treating process that isn't ours because we do it here. So the thing is we've done it all. This is the 4th prototype effectively. It's not like we're trying to work it out like from scratch, but we're just going to see how that goes with their, as I said, we're actually using it at this point. One of the people that will be probably squashing the frame halves for us makes moulds for Tesla and Ford and all that. So we're actually working with a car manufacturer instead of a bike manufacturer, which is fine, but we actually need to heat treat the frame with a bike manufacturer. So how we get that all coordinated is the bit is what we're going to have to work on. Our plan in terms of going up there is it's going to be an as-needed basis. If we need someone there, but there's multiple English-speaking people in the company, we have a Mandarin-speaking, I guess you'd say, person on our team. We don't find there's any issues with the communication side of it, so I think we'll deal with it as we need to. Our goal is to have them take complete ownership of the product, so we don't really want them to have to rely on us to be there to make the thing right. Our thing's going to be around making sure the quality's right. So we're not going to do these mistakes we hear people where they get the shipment here and then it's not what they want. Like, there's no way it's not even going to get down the production line very far before one of our team has been involved in the quality. There's no way anything's going to come here until it's been checked, that's for sure. But they're basically, we're buying bikes off them in a way. They're our manufacturer, but they've got to meet a price and a quality standard, and we spent 2 or 3 months on the actual supply agreement to make sure it's got the right things in it. And I guess that's something I'd say about what I feel we've done well is having a board of 7 up to 8 people with all this diverse experience. We've done some very strategic things to make sure we avoid some of the problems. We didn't go to China and just ring someone off Alibaba. We engaged a company that's based in Guangzhou to find the manufacturer, and they went around and did all that stuff because they know how to do it. We didn't sort of learn it all, as the first timers. So I think some of that's been really good. We've still got things to learn, that's for sure, and it may not all go as planned, but there's nothing massive on my mind that's like, I haven't worked that out yet. So
Keep your link with the community. Don't. It's making the community vibrant. That's why you're selling the bike.
Exactly. I mean,
That link.
it's. I don't like talking about it in terms of how it affects your business because you sort of undermine it. I personally want to make this thing something that people love and want to be involved in, and when they've got one, they'll tell their friends because they love the whole being part of it, the whole why. But it does actually make a lot of sense from a business perspective too. So we'll keep that as part of our core values. So.
Cool. Yeah. All right, put your hands together for Julian.